I lived on nothing but apples for 10 days in London. And no, in case you're thinking, it was not some sort of trendy detox thing. This was purely survival. I had $50 to my name, and I just moved to one of the most expensive cities in the world. And I had 2 weeks to figure out how not to starve before my scholarship money kicked in. And what I learned staring at those apples in a convenience store truly changed how I think about money, investments, and taking risk. So let me tell you how I got there. So this starts when I was studying in Munich doing my undergrad. And Munich, you might know, is a place in South Germany known for being fairly wealthy. And most people I studied with would come from like wealthy families. And one of the rich kids came back from his abroad semester in London. He was very charismatic. I remember that day. He was telling enthusiastically about all these stories about London, the pubs, the weather, the girls he was dating, how expensive everything was and how cool everything was. And he was very mesmerizing. But as he was talking, I'd noticed that his words started blurring out more and more for me. And what got just more and more loud in my head was actually my own voice asking me this question. If he can do that, why can't you? That's what I did. I applied to schools in London. I got accepted. I got a scholarship. Here's the thing with scholarships, though. I feel like oftentimes people misunderstand it a little bit. Just because you got a full scholarship doesn't mean that you're going to be fine financially. Usually it covers tuition and then you might get a small stipend. It's usually not enough, especially if you choose to live in one of the most expensive cities in the world. And so what you definitely need is still a full-on part-time job to get by. And I know that because that's what I've been doing throughout my entire educational path. And in this case, the scholarship also wouldn't kick in until school starts. But I would have to move there at least like a few weeks beforehand, just so I can sort out accommodation and just get settled before school starts. So there I was. I had $50 in my pocket. Actually, no, not in my pocket. It was a credit card that I had that would allow me to withdraw $50 so that I can buy myself some time. And back then, just as now really, London is known to be one of the most expensive cities in the world. And so I could have easily said, all right, I'm someone who is coming from a family without money. I don't have any support. I don't have any financial privileges. And so who am I to think that I could just move to one of the most expensive metropoles in the world and live and study there? Obviously, I did make that decision that I could, and I did. And so I went there. I was lucky enough to have friends from London who were away exactly at that time. And so they allowed me to stay at their place, at their apartment for free. They lived in Hackney, and I don't know if you're familiar with Hackney, but at least back then, East London has changed so much, right? Now it's like this very hip kind of place, but back then, some pockets of Hackney was like straight up rough. And going to a new country, new city, new apartment, there was something nerve-wracking about it for sure. And there are a lot of people always standing around on the streets, listening to loud music, taking drugs, by the bus stop. And now, that's not like something I've never seen growing up in Berlin, but I think it is really more about being in a new place that just felt a little bit different for me. And the place was not super close to the tube station, which is important because I need to get around to find a job. And the apartment was not that close to the tube, the underground, the public transportation system in London, which is crucial because London is huge and I need to be able to move around to find a job. And I had about 2 weeks, right, before school starts, and I had to survive somehow until the money comes in. So by the time school starts, I would have to survive up until then, but also find a part-time job. So after a few days, I figured out how much the Oyster card cost, how much groceries were, just in general have a better picture of everything. And so now I had to making the decision of like how to spend my $50. So my thinking was, okay, I do need to eat something. That's important. I can eat maybe a little bit less. I don't need to eat super fancy or anything like that, but I do need to eat. I'm not going to be able to go 2 weeks without eating. I'm still going to have to smoke. I was a smoker back then and couldn't just quit. My priorities were very different back then. And what's also absolutely important was that I need to be able to move around, to use the public transportation, because I need to go to interviews to get a part-time job. That was the critical one. Because when you think about it, eating is obviously important, but that one was the one that actually is going to move the needle. It's going to move me forward, and it's going to open up. And if I just had a huge meal instead, that would just set me back. It wouldn't give me the opportunity to grow my money or improve my situation in any way. And it would just deplete me further. And so in a way, it's actually very similar to how people in hardship just try to hoard their money instead of actually spending some of it to invest in something that can generate more, like life coaching, career coaching, or some sort of other investment. Anyway, so that's what I did. I bought an Oyster card. I think I put $20 on it, which allowed me to take a few trips back and forth and to go to those job interviews. And so now I'm left with $30. I still haven't figured out how to actually solve for the other stuff yet. But the idea is the quicker I can find a job, the sooner I'm going to change the equation that I'm working with. I'm going to have a whole new mathematical expression to describe my life, to describe my financial situation. Right now, it's eating plus smoking plus Oyster card equals 50. But once I found a job, that equation would be changed. But then on the way back, I was still thinking of how I could use the remaining money to actually get by, because there wasn't a lot of money and it's still half a month's time. And then as I was walking, I came across this convenience store that had a huge sign on the outside that they have a huge promotion for apples. So you can have huge packs of apples at a discounted price. And I looked at them and they looked pretty good too. And having studied chemistry, I obviously knew all the advantages that apples can have, including that it has a lot of fiber and it keeps you full for a long time. And as we all know, 1 apple a day keeps the doctors away. Now, I don't know whether that applies to 6 apples a day though, because that's what I did. So as I was standing there, I did the following calculation. I thought, okay, based on the size, I would probably eat about 1 to 2 apples per meal. And if I have 3 meals per day, that's 6 apples max, okay? And so I would need about at least 60 apples. And so that's what I did. I bought a bunch of them. They came in bags, and so I didn't count individual ones. I had about 60 apples or so that would last me for at least 10 days. And so I spent $20 on those apples, a lot of apples. So basically what I did was this massive apple detox fasting. Every day I would be eating apples for every meal. And that's the only thing that I ate during that time. My skin did get better. My complexion did improve as a side effect. But I was pretty fed up by day 10, to be honest. I couldn't eat actually apples for a while after that. But I always tell these stories with a bit of sense of humor, to be honest, just because, sure, it is a hardship story, but then again, you came out of it on the other side and you learned so much, you grew so much. So, there's no need to be super serious about it. I think it was on the 4th day or so, I already landed a job. I got a job as a night shift hotel manager. That's something for another day, but it was definitely a very interesting time of my life as well. And because I landed the job, so I no longer had to commute to different interview places. So I got some money back and the deposit for the Oyster card. Even though it's all a very small amount, but it did matter a lot at the time. So why am I telling you this story? When someone tells me I can't afford coaching right now, or I can't afford to invest in myself while I'm job searching because I'm already out of a job, because I've been laid off, I need to save money instead. I get it, right? And I really do. But here's what I've really learned when I stared at those apples in that London convenience store. You don't invest when you can afford it. You actually invest to create the ability to afford it. So that Oyster card did not feel affordable to me. I spent almost half of my entire fortune, so to speak, on transportation. It's not easy to do that when you're hungry, when you think of food and cigarettes, right, at the time. And the responsible thing would have maybe been to buy food, to save money, to be conservative. That's what your brain tells you. But the Oyster card was actually the only thing in that equation that could change my math. And it was the only thing that could move the needle, that could move me forward instead of just depleting. And a lot of people right now are doing basically the same thing. They're trying to conserve their way out of a problem that requires actually an investment to solve. So they might be already on month 6, month 9, month 12 of job searching, and they're bleeding 4,000, 5,000, 20,000 per week of lost income. I've seen it all. But they won't invest anything in coaching, not 2,000, not 5,000, not 10,000, not 20,000, because they can't afford it. What they are actually saying, though, is that I would rather lose 20K a month, let's say, in opportunity cost than investing 10K or 5K or 15K to stop the bleeding. Look, this math just doesn't work, right? I didn't have money for those apples either. I had even less money to waste time. And that's the shift, seeing an investment not as an expense, but as the only way to change your equation. What is that equation that describes your situation, your life at the moment? So, if you are sitting right now, job searching for months, watching your savings deplete, and maybe telling yourself that you just can't afford help, I want you to really ask yourself, what's your version of the Oyster card? What's the investment that can actually move you forward instead of just making you feel temporarily comfortable? Because I promise you, the apples will run out, and they did. But that job, that keeps paying me throughout my studies, right? And so a strategic investment, that will change your math. It will change your math forever. If you want to figure out maybe what that strategic investment could look like in your career, what your Oyster card might be, I've put a link in the description where you can book a call with me, and we can figure it out. We can figure out what that version of the Oyster card is for you. And we can figure out what your Oyster card is, okay? And listen, if you found this story helpful, or maybe if it shifted how you think about investment versus expense, do me a favor, share it with someone who might need to hear that, okay? I'll talk to you soon. Bye.